This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Well, a fantastic show today. The sound booth is actually crowded. It's been a long time because everybody's been spread to the winds all over the place. So I'm here with Kim and our dear friend Mark Moss, as well as Sarah. And we're discussing a very important subject, something I know nothing about. And it's a guy named Klaus Schwab and the WTF. Or is it WEF? I think it should be WTF.
WEF.
But anyway, it could be WEF.
World Economic Forum is what it stands for, but what the WTF is good too.
I think WTF is more accurate,
yes.
but we all know what that means. But we're not allowed to say because we might get censored. But anyway, the subject is hot enough that we could get deplatformed anyway for this one. And I was listening to Mark Moss, and I was going, oh, my God, he knows a lot about this. And I don't know much about Klaus Schwab and the WEF or WTF, what do you want to call it. So we thought we'd bring him in. He is in Phoenix right now. And to clarify it, because Mark is a researcher supreme, and I was listening to his program on it, I thought all of you should hear what he has to say. What do you think, Kim?
Well, I'm always fascinated to talk to Mark because he has a wealth of information, and you study history. And so you look back on what's happened and how history repeats itself again and again and again. Of course, this is in a time where we've never seen before. So I'm really looking forward to your take on what's happening. And I'm also looking forward to your take on Klaus Schwab because I've been studying some of his things and the WEF and all of his shenanigans that are hurting the world right now.
So let's talk about what is WEF anyway.
Well, first off, what's WTF?
That's really the most accurate statement.
I say that because there's a cool website by a couple buddies I have. It's called WTFhappened in1971.com.
Right, that's a good one.
You've seen that, right?
No.
Okay,
I agree.
All it is just a bunch of charts. So it's a web page, WTF happened 1971, and all it is charts. And it shows since 1971 what's happened with the income inequality, the obesity rate, the incarceration rate, the divorce rate, the medium income, debt levels, everything since 1971. Why since 1971? It's the year we got off the gold standard. So you can see, it's 100 charts that show what the WTF happened in 1971, and you can see it's just like crazy.
What's the name of this book?
It's a website. WTF happened in 1971.
Good,
and the reason why I start with that, which you said WTF, is because when was the World Economic Forum founded?
1971.
Oh, wow.
Is that true?
WTF happened in 1971.
Wow.
And so the whole world went off the rails in 1971. When you distort the money, you get all types of distortions. And one of those is seen like a WTF, a WEF.
Well, the good news is, I got mine because it was in 1972 I realized what had happened. I was flying in Vietnam, and that's when I went on the gold standard. And I bought my first little Krugerrand in Hong Kong for about $50.
Well, no, you never left the gold standard. See, the dollar left the gold standard.
Yeah,
you just jumped back.
We didn't.
It was good news for me.
So, Mark, a lot of people don't know who Klaus Schwab is or WEF. Can you just give us a little history on that?
Yeah, so a lot of people might have heard of something like Davos, where every year the world leaders, a lot of people call them the world elite. I don't like to use that word. They're not elite in anything. None of us would hire them in our business, but the world leaders, the policy makers, if you will, the think tankers, they get together every year in Davos, and so you hear like the Davos man in reference or something. And
it's politicians, it's business leaders, all of that.
It's both because what their policy is this public-private partnership. Public-private partnership. That's this whole thing.
Public-private? Okay.
So it's politicians and business people getting together, public and private, getting together to set policy. So they get together every year in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. And so it was founded by this guy, Klaus Schwab, who he's a German. His father has deep ties into Nazi Germany, obviously. There's deep ties there. He studied under Henry Kissinger, and he's created this think tank bringing these people together to try to figure out a better way, a more equitable way to run the world. Watch out. Anytime you see that word equitable, you know what they're talking about. They're talking about Marxism. And so what he's done is he's just taken the same ideas. You said we haven't seen this before, but of course we have. It's the same ideas being rehashed. And so it's
globally.
And so it's just Marxism all over. So they get the world leaders together. The the politicians, the public, and the private, and they come together in what he's calling stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism. So instead of, we talked about last night at dinner how Rothbard said that businesses should focus on profit. He says, no, business shouldn't focus on profit. Business should focus on the community, ESG, environmental, social, governance. We should be equitable. And so basically distorted all these things, but they want to do it through power, through control, forcing people to comply instead of educating people and showing people better ways. And so they've done it through the public-private partnership. So basically through the money. So now if you don't fall in line with what their policies are, no money for you, no investment for you, right? And if these big companies don't follow along with their policies and push these things down, they don't get the funding, and then they basically get pushed out of the. So
let's step back a little bit. So who is Mark Moss? I mean, how do you know
That's
so
a good
much?
question.
Well, I'm just someone that grew up reading Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah,
and
good answer.
Yeah, I've said many times. I think I got on this like personal development path. I read How to Think and Grow Rich, and that was the first book that kind of pushed me over. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and like those two books basically kind of sent me off into this angle. And I'm
good
just
company.
Yeah, I'm just somebody who's I figured out how to make a lot of money when I was young. I started buying bank-owned repos when I was 18 years old. And luckily, my network was my net worth. I had a friend who was doing it. He didn't teach me, but I saw that it was possible. I started buying bank-owned repos, zero down. The bank was just trying to get rid of them. This is 1995. I made a lot of money. I built two businesses, one in an internet business out of the dot-com boom, or bust, I should say, one medical business. In 2008, I got hammered. In 2008, like everybody, I was really good at making money, but I didn't understand this financial system. Like, what the heck just happened to me? And
WTF.
Exactly. WTF happened to me. I was good at making money, but I didn't realize there was these forces that had control over my life that I wasn't really paying attention to. The macro. And so for the last 12 years, I've studied the macro. I learned a concept called wealth transfers. Money doesn't disappear. It transfers. And so when I lost my wealth, somebody else got that. I didn't like that.
That's a very good point.
I didn't like that. And so
And that's happening today.
And it's happening today. And so I realized there's certain times and conditions where these wealth transfers happen. And so I've spent the last 12 years studying these wealth transfers to figure out how do I get on the receiving end instead of being on the receiving end of those things.
So where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California.
Where in Southern California?
In Orange County. I lived in Texas until I was in junior high, and then I moved to California with my parents. My dad we had to leave California because the real estate market crashed. He was in construction. California was booming, so we went out there and grew up on the beach surfing, a little bit similar to your upbringing, right, on the beach, which is a good life. And so I live in Southern California, have a family, have a couple kids that I'm trying to raise up the right way. My daughter's going to be splashing on the scene here pretty soon. You'll be seeing and hearing from her soon.
I think that's a great idea that we educate our kids, not the teachers.
Yeah.
And if we don't do that, we're in trouble, big trouble.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm glad you're doing that.
And so how did you get into the education piece and kind of trying to figure out what's going on today? And we're going to get into what we can do to turn this thing around.
Yeah. So after making a bunch of money and then building a couple of businesses and then losing a bunch of money, I was like, I got to figure this out. And so, when your pain is high enough, you'll figure out a way. And so I just started digging into what was I missing in my education. We talked about that. I vowed to my family, like this, my wife and my young daughter at the time, I'm like, this will never happen to me again. I'm going to figure this out. Trust me. And so I just started pouring into that. I started investing in or buying all these investment newsletters, and I became a gold bug. Got onto Mike Maloney, and I figured it was the fiat money system that was the problem. And now I'm a gold bug, and et cetera. And then in 2015, I started buying Bitcoin. And really, I also have to credit Sovereign Man. Shout out to Sovereign Man. He was really influential in kind of building out this worldview where I needed to decentralize my life. And I was in the process of setting up offshore bank accounts and trusts in Panama, and I looked at Bitcoin. I said, well, this is kind of the same thing. I get my money out of the bank. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. So I got into that, and I started writing a cryptocurrency research newsletter from 2016 to 2019. I personally researched and published over 1,000 pages of research on every single crypto project that was out there.
What prepared you to become a researcher? That's a whole...
Curiosity.
Really?
curiosity. I had been investing or buying these investment newsletters for now at this point, whatever, 7-8 years. And so I had seen how it's done. I'm reading these research reports, hundreds and hundreds of research reports from other people. So you kind of start to figure out how to put it together.
Did you go to college and all that?
Nah, I didn't go to college.
Good answer.
Yeah, I didn't go to college. My parents really wanted me to go to college, and I didn't. And I tried. Unfortunately, I have to say this, especially to like my kids. It's like I am not a fan of college, but that doesn't mean that I don't like education.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
I just wanted to learn what I wanted to learn. I didn't want to learn this other stuff. And more importantly, I wanted to learn it and I wanted to apply it. So I'm learning, and people ask me, as I'm sure they ask you all the time, like, what book should I read? And it's like, well, what are you trying to learn? And so typically if I'm hiring people, I'll read a book on management maybe. If I'm trying to scale my business, I might read a book on marketing. And so you're learning what you need and then you apply it. And then if you can, even teach it, which is even better, right? And so, it was out of necessity though, right? So necessity is the mother of invention. So I needed to know what was going on. No one else cared about me as much as I cared about myself. So I poured in myself, and I've read, 1,000 books.
Well, your information is timely, priceless, accurate, which I appreciate. So how much time we have a break here? 3 minutes. Okay, so let's get back to what does Kissinger have to do with Klaus Schwab? That's my
question. And the whole Great Reset.
Yeah. So I think I reference quite often what Henry Kissinger said, which was maybe a warning to the world, but I think it was more of a call to arms on their side. So he said, if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control the continent. If you control the money, you control the world.
And let's back up. A lot of people don't know who Kissinger was. Oh, he's still around. He's still alive.
He's still alive. Yeah, he's still alive.
Who was he?
He's pretty old. Well, he's Secretary of State, right?
For Nixon.
Yeah. So he
opened the door to China.
Opened the door to China, but also, instrumental throughout Europe as well during that time of the, coming out of the World War II, kind of redrawing the world and setting peace and stuff like that. So he was very influential, and he still is today, right?
And he was teaching at, was it MIT or Yale or one of the big universities is where Klaus Schwab met him and studied under him.
That's right. So Klaus Schwab studied under him. I forget which university it was, but he studied under him, and so he's carried on these same philosophies. Yeah. And I think people say, "Oh, you're cherry picking data." Well, really, like, what are the attack vectors today? So food, we're running out of food. Per the UN, they say 868 million people could starve to death in the next 24 months.
Well, you look at what's happening in Sri Lanka today.
Yeah.
There's rioting going on and all this because it's corruption. And basic corruption is what it is, but they're starving.
Yeah, they're starving.
And the Ukraine is going to starve a lot of people.
They're starving and they have no energy. And so
the whole Green New Deal is killing our energy.
So Sri Lanka has the best ESG score in the world, 98 out of 100.
Great, yay!
Yeah.
They passed the test.
Yeah.
Just like school, it means nothing.
They had put out an article 2 years ago, said that by 2025, they were going to be one of the richest nations. They were going to be the poster child for ESG. And it was on the WF website.
And ESG stands for?
Environmental, social, and governance. So they'd give you a score based off of these three metrics, how environmentally sound you are, environmentally low impact on environment, your social score, and then your governance. Do you have diversity on your board and all of these things? And so they were going to be the poster child for this. They proclaimed that we will be the best by 2025. They said by 2025 we'll be one of the richest nations in the world based off of this sustainability.
Sri Lanka coming apart at the seams right now.
Well, no, they're completely gone. Yeah, they defaulted on their bonds. They got no money. Nobody will loan them any more money. They don't have any money to import any energy, so they have no energy.
So they went the path that the Great Reset is all about, and they're gone. That should say something.
So who? Let me ask this: who came up with ESG? Do you know?
I'm not exactly sure who started ESG. It came out of the WEF, the WEF, we'll call it, the WEF camp, and it came out of that. It's just a way to control people.
So are you saying Kissinger, how would you classify his political core? Is it fascist?
Power and control.
That's fascist.
Yeah, fascist. I think those labels are difficult, right? They're fascist, sure.
Do you know where he got his education or his ideology?
I don't, but I can see like the world that he grew up in, right? So World War I, World War II. So that shaped his worldview. I don't know exactly who he studied.
But the reason I was shocked when you just said that, I'm going because when I was a kid, he was extremely well respected.
Oh yeah.
You know, he was Nixon. He was doing all these global initiatives and all that stuff. And then to hear him associated with Klaus Schwab, who I don't know much about anyway, and then Schwab was a student of Kissinger. It makes what you and I and we teach, and so many guys like George Gammon and Kenny Mack, makes what we teach more important.
Yeah.
Because we teach freedom of and capitalism, and these guys teach fascism.
Communism.
So we come back, we'll be talking more with Mark Moss. Very important subject here, Klaus Schwab and the WTF.
And the Great
WEF,
Reset.
What do you want to say it? But I'm doing this not because I want to get hit with a drone strike here, but I think we have to know. And that's why I was very impressed with what Mark was doing on his interview with the WEF and Klaus Schwab. We'll be right back.
The Rich Dad Company's mission is to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. And one of the ways we do this is through the Rich Dad Radio Show. The first investing tip we tell our listeners is to make sure their portfolio is diversified. One way to do this is by investing in companies that are themselves diverse. Companies that operate around the globe, companies that are innovative, or companies that provide differentiators in the respective category. Even better, invest in companies that meet all three areas, like Akamai. Akamai makes life better for billions of people, billion times a day, through their cybersecurity, cloud, and edge solutions. They have everything that investors look for in a company that has long-term stock value. Strong financials, a global platform, diversified across products, and a leader in the security space. To learn more about Akamai, visit their website, akamai.com/richdad. That's AKAMAI.com/richdad. And make sure to explore all the ways you can keep your portfolio diverse.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today we have the WTF show. I mean, I want to know what's going on. And I suspected it was going to get bad. You know, most of my books, like your buddy, what's his name at Freedom Fest? I won't mention his name, but he hates me.
Yeah,
because
the one who doesn't like you.
he hates me at Freedom Fest because there's no freedom at Freedom Fest. I cannot say what I want to say. I said this we're going to crash big time.
Yeah.
So I wrote Rich Dad's Prophecy and all this in 2008. Damn right it crashed, and we're still crashing today. Dalio says we're now in a depression. So that's why I speak what I said. And so at Freedom Fest, even I got censored there. So what's happening to America? So we're here with Mark Moss. I mean, he did a report on this guy named Klaus Schwab, which I've only heard rumors about. So that's why this program is a very important show to find out what's going on.
And Mark's got his new book called Uncommunist Manifesto.
That's right.
That just came out.
The Uncommunist.
The Uncommunist Manifesto.
So who is this guy, Klaus Schwab, one more time, and what are they really up to?
Yeah, so founded the WF, the World Economic Forum. And I think it's important to understand, too, like where we're at in the world, right, with this peak centralization, central planning.
Right.
I like to say central planning always fails. And because they don't have enough data, they know they don't have enough data. You can't organize billions of people, right? But they're trying to. And so central planning, so it's World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, World Trade Organization.
Fauci?
Yeah.
UN.
World Meteorological Association. And then, the UN, the IMF, the BIS.
What's the BIS?
So that's the
Bank of International Settlements.
The Bank of International Settlements, that nobody knows what the BIS is. And the BIS...
It's a central bank.
The central bank of central banks, exactly. And so if you look at an org chart, I have in a presentation I gave, I think it was at George's conference, I had an org chart of the way I see the world. And on the org chart, the BIS sits at the top. Below the BIS, then you have some of these think tanks. So the World Economic Forum is one of them, the Club of Rome, and so they're the policy makers. And then they push it down to the next row in the org chart to the policy enforcers, which are the governments. And so the governments sit a few levels down. So it's really a coup of the bankers. And they use this banker, the BIS at the top, to push these ideas through the think tanks and then down to the policy enforcers. And then we're down at the bottom, the subjects of all that, right? So Klaus is kind of running this. He's sitting on top of the world, hobnobbing with all these people, flying their private jets over to Davos, telling us that we need to cut back on our energy, telling us that we need to eat the bugs. This is on their website. They're talking about why we should be eating bugs. They're more sustainable.
I've seen
was
it.
Kim Basinger? Or no, who was Nicole Kidman? Nicole Kidman, there was she made a commercial, I think 2 weeks ago, of her actually eating bugs. That's what they're putting on TV now.
Okay, so food. We were talking about food.
So food.
Okay, so
Bugs are food.
let's talk about food. What's happening? So we talked about Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
What's happening in Europe?
Yeah, so let's talk about food. So the food is the first attack vector. So I was on Fox Business 2 weeks ago. They asked me about an article the UN put out, when the UN titled the article, "Why It's Good to Be Hungry." Why being hungry is good. And they were saying we need people to be starving because there's all these jobs that have to be done that nobody would do unless they were starving.
Who said that?
It was an article on the UN website.
Wow.
And like I said, Fox had me on to talk about it. They took it down after half a day because the backlash was so insane. But per the UN, about 868 million people could starve to death in the next 24 months, almost 1 billion. So
In the next 24 months?
Yeah. And so at a time, Marxism, whenever Marxism has been tried in Russia in the early 1900s, about 25 million people starved to death. In Mao's Great Leap Forward, about 50 million people starved to death. Those were horrific, 50 million people.
And they killed them too.
We're talking about almost 1 billion now. And so at a time when we have almost 1 billion people that could be starving to death, shouldn't we be trying to get as much food as possible out? We would try to do everything we can. But in Holland, they've gone and shut down the farms. They're trying to take over their land, and they want to take over the farms and stop them from growing not just food, but also raising cattle and meat. And so now it's massive protests are happening in Holland at a time where we need more food. In the United States, the farmers are being paid not to plant. They're not allowed to plant on some of their land. And they went and they petitioned the Secretary of Agriculture and said, "Hey, let us plant. We can get more food." And they said, "No. It's not in line with our agreement for the Paris Accord."
The Paris Accord.
It's just the environmental thing.
Which is the environmental thing, which is what President Trump had pulled us out of. And then Biden's very first day in office, the most important thing he had to do by executive order was put us back into the Paris Accord. So we can't grow food in the United States because of climate change. Holland can't grow food. And now the protests are happening all over the world, and it's even bigger. So like in all throughout Europe, there's an energy crisis going on. Everybody should know that by now. I've been talking about it for 2 years, and they don't have natural gas. They're dependent on Russia for natural gas. But we need natural gas in Europe to make fertilizer, and we need fertilizer to grow food. We also need natural gas to process food.
Okay, what are the three things what did the kitchen server say?
So food, points? And then the next one is the energy.
And the next one is?
And then the money.
Right, and that's what Rickers was talking about.
Yeah.
The CBDC, central bank digital currencies.
I read a story on the thing on energy, and this farmer was told, "Oh, you have to turn all your equipment to electric by a certain time, within the year." He goes, "Oh, well, that's fine, except I run 24 hours a day during the harvest, and I have to have these vehicles here at this time, and if one breaks down, how do I get it?" It's like no thought given at all. Just, you have to be electric.
Yeah.
It's impossible. I mean, it's impractical, and it's not going to work. And it's to your point, it's going to put more farmers out of business.
I'm constantly reminded by an Ayn Rand quote from Atlas Shrugged, where she says, when you must receive permission to produce from men who produce nothing."
Right. So, not that I'm a lawyer or anything, but when I studied business law, they said intent is everything.
Yeah.
You can do something and make a mistake, or was it intentional? There's two different stories there. What's the intent of Kissinger, Klaus Schwab, and that Trudeau
Soros.
was part of his camp too, right? Prime Minister of
The
Canada.
young, yeah.
This is something I struggle with a lot, and I ask on my videos quite often. Do you think is it stupid or is it evil? And a lot of people.
I go with evil.
It's both, right? So there's certainly people that know what they're doing and it's evil, and then I think there's a lot of people that have just come up in the system and they're just brainwashed by it. But in the Avengers, they had the enemy, the evil guy was Thanos, and he came up with this theory where he had to kill half the world in order to save half the world, right? We had to get rid of half the population. So it was kill half the world to actually save the world. And I feel that's where they are at. They feel that this is a necessary sacrifice, and they're telling us as much. I mean, the Secretary of the Energy for the United States is on TV telling people, we get it, gas prices are expensive, you can't afford to drive, but it's necessary. It's necessary for the transition. So they're saying
for the greater good.
For the greater good. I mean, Putin's saying that Americans must sacrifice and must suffer because we have to defeat Russia. It's for the greater good.
But the Achilles heel is that third one, which is the money supply.
The money. And that's the big one.
That's what I wrote about in Capitalist Manifesto. It's this book here, the Central Bank of the United States was founded in 1913. Guess what else was founded in 1913? Tax Department.
The Federal Reserve and the IRS.
Yep.
And so when you look at all this, and then if you read Marx, he says that a progressive income tax is necessary for the spread of communism. And then when they cut off the Keystone XL pipeline, inflation went through the roof. Now the poor are already poor, but when you raise inflation, the price of fuel, the middle class got poor. And now when I shop, I look around and I go, the retailers, they're on sale. Everything's on sale. I can't help myself. Money, I'm having a great time. But I feel for the retailers right now because the customers are going broke. So is the intent evil?
In the Communist Manifesto, number 5, he had 10 points. Number 5 was the creation of a central bank.
Right.
So central banks are part of Marxism.
Of course.
That's the whole goal.
Yeah.
And that's what I wrote in my manifesto. The central bank is communism, central controlled economy.
Yeah.
The American system, not Americans, but most people are completely uninformed.
Oh, totally uninformed. So let me ask you this. You know, there's a lot of talk about what you do and how you prepare and how you get food and you buy gold and all of this. But there's a bigger what to do. What do we do? How do we, is it possible to turn this thing around or?
Yeah. So it depends on what you're trying to do, right? So if you're just trying to protect yourself and like, can I go live on a mountaintop and protect myself till I die? Or am I going to try and save the world? Right. And so I'm trying to save the world, right? We're on different things. In the book, the Uncommunist Manifesto, we did our same 10 points, and point number 4 was the abolition of any and all central banks. So we just say, we need to end it. Obviously you guys are educators and I've now become an educator. And I think good ideas win because they're better. And I think if we can have good, intelligent discussion, then we can turn the tide on this thing. And so I think that we need to highlight how bad and disastrous these ideas are and then show that there are better ideas out there. Now, they've done a really good job of taking over the education system. So when communism was defeated in the 70s and really started in about the 60s, it kind of went underground and it came into the universities in the United States. And so they've done a really good job playing this long game, and they started with changing the college age kids' viewpoints on these things, who have now moved into media, who have now moved into government, who have now moved into finance.
This goes back to what, the 60s?
The 60s, yeah. So
actually, it was 1930 that the Frankfurt School sent teachers to Columbia University's Teachers College, and that's when it spread.
Okay.
Because in the 60s, I remember Columbia first time rioting. I'm going, why are they rioting? You know what I mean? But it was in the 60s. Mm-hmm. It was against the Vietnam War, and then when I came back from Vietnam, I get hit with eggs and spit on and called baby killer. It was college kids.
Yeah.
And it's not improved. Now we have TikTok.
Yeah.
And TikTok is scrambling. It's turning their brains into scrambled eggs.
It is. It's bad, but
and it's a Chinese organization.
But we can use those. We can use those tools, and we've talked about that extensively, and we will. So I think we have to use their same playbook, fight fire with fire, if you will, right? And so get back into the education and start changing their mind. Now, I think also the one thing that we have to our advantage is their ideas don't work. Left to their own, they fail.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. So Nietzsche says, that which is falling, shall ye also push. And so it's already fallen. The system's crumbling. The financial system is done. Like the EU's on the verge of breaking up. The bond problem that they have is one that they probably can't solve over there. The pigs nations down below, they're done. Germany has lost its position. The energy is too high. So the EU's on the verge of breaking up.
Who are the pigs?
The Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain. So the southern nations in the European Union. Italy and Greece have to constantly be bailed out. They don't have any production. Germany has been the production engine of Europe, but now they've become a net importer.
Because of the
energy
war.
prices have gone so high that they can't afford to produce anymore, and they have to import their energy. But why do they have to import their energy? Well, they shut all their nuclear reactors off. And when
did they do that?
Over the last decade, they've been shutting them down. And so their energy prices have gone up by 8 times. When next door, France, they still have cheap power because they still have nuclear. So in Europe, they have massive amounts of shale gas like we do in the United States, but they don't want to get it out.
So do you see, let's go back to Holland, which we think of as a peaceful nation, more or less. What are they doing to fight back there?
Yeah, so it's what they've done, and humans can take a lot of abuse from governments, but when you can't eat or feed your family, that's when it's like game on, right? 9 meals to anarchy, they say. You don't eat for 9 meals, it's on, right?
What 3 for me?
So what they've been doing is they've been taking to the streets, sort of like we saw in Canada with the truckers, but now it's the farmers with their tractors, and they're taking these tractors and they're making the Canadian truckers look like child play. I mean, they are out in serious droves. Some of the farmers got arrested. The farmers went to the police station, surrounded them, and made them release the farmers. They've been filling up the city with manure. They blocked the airports. The fishermen have gotten involved. Now the fishermen are blocking the ports. I even saw the farmers broke into the military base and started dragging jets out of the military and putting them on the roads to block.
Good for them.
But now it's spread to Poland. It's spread to Germany.
They're doing the same thing.
They're all doing.
So it's
all the farmers are uniting in protest.
So it's backing up. It's like the drain got clogged, and now it's backing up on Klaus Schwab and buddies.
Yeah, and so now they're like, well, if we can't grow food, then no food. So you get no food then, and the shelves are bare, and they're feeling the pain.
Well, the last time I was in Hawaii, they said, "What do you think is going to happen?" I said, "I hope you like." I said, "I hope you like the taste of human flesh." Nobody laughed on that one. But, well, because Hawaii is an island, they import most of everything they eat.
And you know what too is okay. So first it was the truckers, right? Truckers in Canada, truckers in the U.S. Now it's the farmers. So you look at who the critical people are in the world: farmers, and then truckers have to get the food from the farm to the people. It actually is a big wake up call for.
And then we have Jim Records coming on in a few days on Rich Dad Radio, and we'll be talking to him about CBDC, which is central bank digital currency, which is spyware. It's much like TikTok is. Yeah. And so that our job is
control.
Yeah, but our job is to wake people up and then fight back using the same technology, which I agree with. Let's fight back with education and information.
What would you say, Mark, to somebody who right now they've been scared to death and they're afraid to speak out? I mean, I talked to a very well-known nonprofit, and they're very much in the right. They're very much pro-freedom, pro-constitution, all of this, and they told me their donors, people that donate money to them, want to do it anonymously because they're afraid to be associated with this pro-freedom, pro-constitution, pro-free market organization. Yeah. What do you say to somebody who's so afraid? I mean, they're going to just get annihilated if they don't do something.
Put a second mask on.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple things. I think one, I gave you that story last night about racking the shotgun. So not everybody's our target. There's a few people that are standing up. And if you look back at the Revolutionary War in the United States, for example, it was the minority that forced that revolution to happen. So we don't need to reach the masses.
It was less than 5%.
Less than 5%. We just need that small irate minority we talked about last night. So people need to join. People need to stand up. You're standing up. We're standing up together. Some people are a little bit afraid. What would I say to them? So I would say, one, my grandfather was decorated in World War II, right? His Marine base got bombed. My father flew jets in Vietnam. I thought I would just go to war one day. That was my lineage. I mean, look at those boys storming the beach in Normandy. Their friends are getting blown up by them, and now today people are afraid to say something. So I'd say, first of all, stop being a victim, slap yourself and pull your boots up. But for those that are still afraid, then just support other people who are willing to stand up. And so if you want to do it anonymously, then do it anonymously, but at least do something, at least support others who are willing to stand
up.
That's
a very good point.
That's a really good
point. Good point. I just go, meow.
I wanted to not comply with the whole, lockdowns and all of that. And I didn't want to be arrested, but I saw some people were willing to be arrested, and I was donating money to those people to help them with their legal funds.
Right. And it's funny that I support politicians who stood up. I don't care what what party they are, but do they stand up?
Yeah.
And I've gotten into a number of arguments in our neighborhood, Kim, because
So I've heard.
Final words from Mark, and then Sarah will chime in, and then we'll go back more into what we can do with WTF. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Today our guest is Mark Moss, and he's one of the, in my opinion, one of the greatest authorities on the WTF, the World Economic Forum. And we're talking about what you can do to fight back, because I personally believe we're at a war right now. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I do. I really like what you said, Mark, about people who are afraid, who don't want to stand up, that then support people who are standing up, because we need that. And I think we talked earlier about the internet and how the internet could be a great tool for disseminating this information and getting it out to more and more of the masses, because there's more of us than there are them. Exactly. So, yeah.
And then what else happened just recently? I gave you that article last night, who they're targeting in Congress. And one of them is my really good friend, Marine 3-star general, congressman. They're targeting him. Mm-hmm. So we already donated to the max, but we can also donate on the other side of it to support him. Yeah. So that's what we're doing.
They're interesting. All of the people on that sheet that you gave me are all military. They were all military people who are Congress and Senate, and they're targeting the military because I think the military's tough and they're going to stand up and they're going to fight back, and they don't want that.
And the guy who put it together is a Navy SEAL.
Yes.
So that's why we support. We've got to fight back. If you're going to wear a triple mask and all that stuff, it's up to you. Yeah. But vote with your money. Support those who fight back.
And there's some good ones. I mean, Jim Jordan, he's really out there fighting. Rand Paul, he's out there fighting. So we have some good ones, and definitely support them. Even Ron DeSantis. I mean, neither of us are in his state, but I have no problem helping support him as well. And so we have to stand up together. But back to the point that you just made, though, is that you talked about supporting them with our money. Without freedom of payments, without freedom of money, there is no freedom at all. So we're guaranteed a freedom of speech, but if I don't have money to buy a phone or go on the internet or print a pamphlet or build a website, I have no freedom of speech. And if I have freedom of assembly, but I can't pay to put gas in my truck to drive to the assembly, I have no freedom of assembly either.
But the reason we're having Jim Records on, few coming next Rich Dad Radio programs, is if we go to CBDC, a central bank digital currency, and they find out we're supporting, like my friend Marine 3-star General Bergman, they can shut me down.
Sure. Well, they just prevent the payment from ever happening in the first place.
Well, then they'll track me and then put a drone strike on my house.
Or the guy in Texas who donated to the Canadian truckers, and they froze his accounts.
Right. Yeah.
That's like the SWIFT in the what they did to Putin. Anyway, let's wrap it up right here. Sarah, got anything you want to say?
Real quick thing on Palisades Gold.
Yeah.
You did an interview, which we all studied here as a company. And one of the things you talked about was Klaus Schwab, who said, you'll own nothing and be happy. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Yeah, so it means what it sounds like. So you'll own nothing and be happy. So what Marxism thinks is that if we could take away your private property and we could and you could just have everything, like live in a commune, like communism, and we could take away human desire to strive and to have more, because that's what poisons us. This capitalist system that makes me want to work and achieve more and have more
human
order.
Nature.
Right, human nature. If we can take that away, people would be happy. If they, because right now we're unhappy because we don't have what we want. We're always striving. We always have to work harder. And so if we can take that away, but that's what they think. So you'll own nothing and you'll be happy because you won't need to strive. You won't see anybody else having something that you don't have. And they think there's this utopia, but they don't understand there's human nature, to your point.
But that's what I'm asking you. Is it intent or is it a mistake?
It's 100% intent, right? Yeah. So obviously Karl Marx wrote the book, The Communist Manifesto, and that book, unfortunately, as far as I understand, has become the most read book in both political science and economics.
Correct.
And your book, let me see your book.
Yeah, and so we wrote the Uncommunist
Manifesto,
which is basically it's an hour read. It's 10,000 words, and it basically doesn't refute the book point by point, but rather it reframes it. And so what they said is that there's a struggle between classes, the rich and the poor, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Yep. Cultural Marxism today it's a struggle between all classes, white and black, men and women, gay and straight, et cetera, right? Which is the same thing. It's the struggle between people, arbitrary classes. We redefined and said, no, the real struggle, the real axis of struggle is between the individual and the collectivist. It keeps trying to pull them into these groups and take away their individual identity. And so
which is centralization.
Which is centralization, right? And
Command and control. This is communism.
well, because what these Keynesians want to do is they want to boil us down to a digit on a spreadsheet. And so these people are like this, these people are like this, and they take away the things like motivation, and they don't take things into consideration like that make us an individual. I believe that individualism is great. I believe individualism is necessary because if we're different, we can all see the same thing, but draw different conclusions. We see different problems and we come up with different solutions. And so we can have more progress in the world. If we're all the same, looking at the same thing, where will we have? No infinite return.
Yeah, it's called free market capitalism, but more important is we're fighting for our freedoms.
Yeah.
Like, I'm afraid to speak up now. Remember during COVID, they were censoring doctors. You couldn't say anything.
I don't believe that. You're not afraid. I've heard you say some things.
Other people, Robert's not afraid.
I'm censored in this room right now. No, it's tragic what's happening.
Yeah.
So we fight for our freedoms more than anything else, not for capitalism. Not, you want to be a Marxist? Be a Marxist. You want to be a tranny? Have a good life. Who you sleep with? None of my business. But don't take my freedom away. Right. And that's what we stand for at Rich Dad. So anyway, I want to thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Thank you.
Thôi mong chờ vậy sao bật khóc trong ngu ngơ vẫn thế đây bao lâu nay em không hay chỉ một mình anh ngồi khóc nước mắt đây riêng nơi đây em không hay sự thật là anh nhớ em người giờ đã xa lời hẹn ước đâu rồi nước mắt đây rơi biết bao lâu thì khô vẫn thế đây bao đêm say em không hay từng giọt buồn sao mặn đắng nhưng lúc ấy anh loay hoay trong cơn say lại nhầm rằng em ở đây người giờ đổi thay tình mình vẫn đong đầy thế mới biết anh vẫn yêu em thì sao tìm quên chốn xưa ngày ta quen